Lenka Pincot, who's the head of Agile transformation at Raiffeisen Bank. I don't know, Lenka, if I should say Czech Republic or Czechia now. What is the more politically correct version? I guess both go.
I think both go. Czech Republic is fine.
Okay. So Lenka is an experienced leader of organizational transformations and strategic changes with focus on enhancing business agility. We've been talking also a couple of days ago, and Lenka told me that she actually learned most about agility in the US because they are way ahead of us. And she treats this as an enabler to help companies, and in this case, of course, Raiffeisen Bank, with digitalization. Lenka has been in banking since 2 years, and on the more, let's say, sunny side of life, she is also a working mom, super busy with 3 kids, and her husband is a senior executive, so we can imagine that he's very often, I guess, away. So Lenka is actually living and breathing agility also at home, and she told me a trick of how to, make shopping easier. She has actually a system to organize her fridge. And she's able to, with compartmentalizing, difficult word, to make her shopping list in literally less than a couple of minutes. She's also a guest lecturer in one of Vienna's universities about system thinking, because it's one of her passions. So welcome, Lenka. It's a pleasure to have you here. I would then hand over the screen to you, and I would like to ask the audience again to please ask your questions. Don't be shy. We're going to answer all of them.
Okay, thank you so much. I hope you see my screen now. Right?
Yes,
good, perfect.
Yes, perfect.
So, thank you. This is always a nervous point about every presenting, like, will it work? Will it show up? Okay, so I'm happy that it's there. So, hi everyone, hi from Czech Republic. What you see behind me, this is actually a picture from Prague, our beautiful view. So my name is Lenka Pincot, and I'm head of Agile transformation in the Raiffeisen Bank in Czech Republic. And my topic here is how to scale up agility and how to actually become Agile enterprise. So maybe it will also reflect to some of the questions that we heard before on the example of Peso. So how to make agility really live in the company. Before I jump to that, I thought that I will tell you a little bit about myself, because this conference is about financial institutions, and it's true that I'm here in finance just for about 2 years. So how my journey actually started. In general, I'm a very curious person. So, I was a kid when computers came, and I was really intrigued by computers. So I decided to study computer sciences, but I quickly, realized that I'm not going to be a developer. It's really not my passion. So I focus on software engineering. So basically, how do you design system for companies? Which led me to another step in my career, because if you want to design something, you need to understand how companies work, right? So I spent in about 10 years in management consultancy, working with executives, with CEOs, and I mostly try to help them to put together their IT functions and business together. And I really enjoyed that, but I really wanted to be part of the change for a long time, not just to come and see and go, but I wanted to be part of it and live with the consequences if you make some mistakes. So as the next challenge, I started to work on international jobs. I was on international positions in Europe. I also spent some time in US. And altogether, my topic always been like how to connect business, IT, and how to make it strategic advantage. And this led me to my last challenge, and that is how to actually transform very traditional industries such as banking. And this is where I am today. So, as I said, I'm very curious, so you may see a lot of questions in my PowerPoint presentation. And the first one is, when we talk about scaling up agility, I think we need to ask ourselves, like, why would we even do that? What is the driver for that? Because frankly speaking, we can just set up some product agile teams, just few of them. We give them the tools, we give them the trainings, we give them coaches, and they will probably just be fine. They will execute, they will deliver their products in agile ways. So why do we think about scaling it and making it bigger in the whole organization? And if we want to take the same impact as agility has on small teams on the whole company, we really need to understand first, like, what is the impact, what people actually enjoy when they work in agile teams. So we ask them, and when we ask them, this is typically what we hear. This is what people that work in agile teams that are proud of. So it's their ability to deliver, it's teamwork, it's transparency. They see purpose in their jobs. They also learn a lot. All these things they really, really enjoy. And so then when we talk about scaling up, I think what is really important to realize, if we want to create people experience, so really replicate or scale up what people experience when they work in these agile pilots or smaller teams, or if we focus on framework experience, which are two very different things. And me personally, I definitely prefer to focus on people. And this is also the way how we lead our transformations in Raiffeisen Bank. So of course we use some frameworks. I mean, we learn from them because that's a lot of know-how contributed by many people, by many agile coaches, scrum masters, people who work in the field. So we learn from that. But our main priority is to give this agile experience and benefits of working in agile way to people, because we believe in empowerment. Because when we empower them and give them autonomy, they will give us the results. It will not be the frameworks, unfortunately. It really is people who then produce all these products and customer experience, what we are looking for. So when it comes to scaling, there's always this big question. So you typically in a situation where you have some agile teams, you started, you piloting, and you want to make it bigger. And so how to get there, how to actually lead the transformation. And in general, there are basically like two ways. Either you do something which it's called like big bang, right? So you take the larger part of your company, you draw the picture, you design it, and then you go and then you make the big portion of change. And you typically do these steps where you really want to send a strong signal. We're doing it, we're transforming it, and we understand that it's quite difficult to have only these pilots, these islands of agility in the company. So we take a big part, we redesign it, we launch it, and here we go. The other way is something which can be called like bottom up or step by step, which is this organic growth of agility, which means that you start small from small teams and then you build it up and then you organize them. It's not a surprise that both of these approaches have some risks or some challenges on its own. For the big bank, which I experienced by myself in some other bank that I was working for, the key risk is the readiness for a big, overwhelming change. Because as you involve a lot of people in the organization in the change at the same time, you also must be ready to support them in the change. And it's really different if you want to train 20 people, 30 people, or we talk about thousands at the same time. So the challenge is the readiness for change in this really, really big amount of people. For the evolutionary or organic approach, bottom up, there is of course a huge risk and huge challenge that your people will exist in two cultures, in two sets of environments, and things will simply be difficult for them. Also, as this approach is in general slower, you may lose the momentum. So none of them, I would say, is perfect. You have to choose for one, but I think that you must be ready to make decisions on your way and pivot. And sometimes you go slower and sometimes you go faster and make bigger changes. I can't really say which one is better. I experience personally both. And right now I choose the bottom up, the slower one, with more focus on getting ready for the change. But that means that we have to deal with culture, two sets of environments, and sometimes we need to make bigger changes to keep the momentum and to move forward. So during the scaling up, there are three elements, three areas that you need to look really closely at, and that is the organization structure. And we are here on Agile conference, so we all know that when we're building Agile teams, it's all about end-to-end and cross-functionality and, you know, putting business IT together. However, when we are in the bank, it's a regulated environment, and it's not only about these end-to-end teams by themselves. they cannot exist on their own. So when you look at the organization structure and you want to scale up and have more agile teams, bigger setups, the whole portfolio managed in agile way, you really have to be focused how you integrate these agile teams with the other crucial departments in the bank. So what is the model of cooperating? Where do people belong? How do you plug in this whole together? You're basically creating a new system. It's not only about agile teams itself, which typically are in the product areas. It's really about the whole organization design. You cannot have agile part of a company. You really need to have agile architecture for the whole company. So this is a challenge that you simply need to look at. And even if you go typically by product areas, and then you go to some supporting functions or operations, my advice would be to talk to all these people at once, even if you don't make changes in all parts of the organization, but they need to know how to plug in to this agile work that you're transforming. The other area where you need to look at are the processes. And again, we say, yes, sure, processes, we need to change them too. But the question is, what is the change that we actually look for? And here, my point is to look at the design of processes in a way that you really support transparency, trust, but also decision-making inside the teams. Because if you want your teams to be autonomous, you need to delegate decision-making and quality control inside the teams. And this is the lens that we look at the processes when we're thinking about redesigning them. How do we support these principles? And last but not least, and actually the biggest challenge of all, culture and mindset. Well, when we look at the culture is set of rules. It's like learned behaviors. It's something how we behave in the company. This is how we do things. You know, the rules can be written, can be unwritten, can be informal. And so if you want to have not only the organization structure or processes designed in a certain way, and you also want to work with your culture, just look at these rules and try to understand what are the blockers for autonomy, what are the blockers for empowerment, where you actually putting rather obstacles in front of your people to be able to follow agile practices, and then you have to remove these obstacles. This is how you support the culture change. But you know, these things takes time, so be ready that people need to learn, that you are serious about it, that you really want to support culture of agile teams, of cooperation, of transparency, of trust. So it's always good to have some role models in your company who demonstrate these behaviors so that you allow your people to trust the change, and gradually they will change their behavior and your culture will change as well. It's all about examples and it's all about authenticity, that when you make the change, you really have to live the change. That's why I organize my fridge, right? So let's go back to frameworks a little bit. I said at the beginning that the frameworks are useful, but we really have to be aware, what are they for, where can they help us, and where we have to find our own way. So I made a little comparison, what is great on frameworks and where I think that they are not going to help us that much. So the first thing, that agile scaling frameworks, and we saw a couple of them, like, you know, probably SAFe, Scrum of Scrum, Discipline Agile, there are plenty of them. We look at them as kind of checklist. They embed the good principles, something that we would like to have. However, there are some things which are particularly difficult in finance sector, and especially if you are transforming. It's quite different if you're building something new product teams. So for instance, when you're building new things, you can think about, oh, I want person with this profile, I want person with this mindset, I want this kind of skill, and I put it in a team. When you are transforming, you deal with what you have. And as we talk about agile teams, which are all based on end-to-end and cross-functionality, the truth is that in finance, typically, historically, we were going more for specialization, focused functions, and this is some obstacle that the framework will not help you. This is really your internal work, your internal thing that you really have to address. Another thing is that frameworks really show us how teams should cooperate. which is a good thing. It's like a great thing to do. However, here in finance, we face another challenge, and that is that our organization structures are typically organized by customer segments, which does not necessarily mean that they are organized by customer experience. Because, for instance, when you look at digital services, digital products, they have some backbones, they have some platforms, and these platforms are the same for customers, even if the customers coming from different segments, but yet we still want to give them the same digital experience. So how do we do the design? How do we coordinate the teams? How do we even look at the traditional institution from customer perspective? And the last thing which is great on frameworks is definitely the advice for agile practices. And I guess this is nothing new for you, continuous integration, all the stuff. But the truth is we have to live with a lot of legacy systems, with a lot of architecture issues that we have. And so again, we all look at all these frameworks with a little bit of jealousy, like, yeah, we would love to have it, but there's a lot of work how to rework these systems, or this is very long-term run, and this is of course then slowing down the transformation, because this IT architecture is influencing the way how we can build our teams and what tools we can have them to really have this agile way of working that we would like to give them. So overall, we follow some good practices in our design. What you see on this picture, this is a very general picture that we have. We are putting our teams together in setups which we call tribes. We distinguish between different types of teams. We work with centers of expertise. We work with communities of practice, but we do not really follow any particular framework. You can see that on that for instance, the term community of practice is more coming from SAFe framework. Tribe is more inspired by Spotify. We are putting it together as it fits to our culture and our organization. And when we look at frameworks, scaling up frameworks, we rather learning from them than not necessarily copying them. So with this all said, there are a lot of things that we taking care of during the transformation to scale up, which means to have more teams and to give this agile culture, mindset, experience to more people in our organization. But it's very important that we set the lighthouse, something that we follow throughout the whole transformation. It's not KPIs, it's not targets. We have them too, but we more use them to look backwards, like how fast we go, how much we progress. But what is really leading us are principles of adaptive organization, which we localized for ourselves. We call them with our own words, so it fits in our culture. And this is the lighthouse for us. We have board commitment for this lighthouse, and we embed it in everything that we do in our organization transformation, which means in the transformation roadmap, in our onboarding workshops, everything that we do. We have the lighthouse that we follow. We work a lot on the topic of culture. I am leader of Agile Transformation team, which is basically a very small team of few people there. And we do a lot by cooperating with other departments, especially with departments who look at culture, who look at our employees. And so the way how we address these topics, we building communities across the company. We always promote transparency and openness. We train our people on agile leadership, psychological safety, and we have very, very friendly agile onboarding workshops for people to let them understand what is it all about and how they can join the transformation. On the process side, we work a lot with objectives and key results method to be able to structure our objectives, to create this empowerment and autonomy of teams, to really give them the power to set their own objectives, key results, to let them figure out what to do. We use some types of ceremonies to coordinate between the teams, and then we work with a set of health checks and good practices to utilize this know-how which is in these frameworks to see that, okay, we really have to cover this, we are on a good way, or right, okay, we have to slow down here a little bit because we're not ready for this step. And then the organizational structure, we basically looking at where we can progress with the transformation, how to organize the teams, how to put them together so that we can cover by agile practices whole product portfolios and not just by single teams. So overall, to wrap it up, for me personally, scaling is a lot about balancing. When you think about scaling, it's like transformation. You may think about steps, roadmap, kind of a project maybe, but what it really is, it's about balancing. And you need to balance the speed of scaling up, of transformation, with ability of your organization to change. Because you are changing some vital functions, some vital parts of the organization while you are moving at the same time. Transformation and scaling up in existing organization is really very different when we talk about scaling up by growing, by building new teams. Because in transformation, you're really changing something which is already in motion and you don't have that luxury to put it aside or build it new. So what I would recommend to focus on empowerment your people so that you can distribute the change from some single small central department across the organization. And you can only achieve it by educating and raising awareness and empowering people so that they contribute to the change by themselves, even if they are not part of any kind of change team. Another area where we really focus on is to be approachable. Transformation and scaling up must be very transparent. And we really live by this principle. We are open for everyone. We're building new communities and we are always telling people like, hey, if you want to contribute to transformation, just join us. We have everything for people available and we are always there to answer any questions. We're not hiding anything. So we really, and if there's someone who says, I want to be part of your team, it's also possible. And the last thing, we work with proof of concepts. Before we make a big change, we always try that first. We prototyping, we're doing our MVPs, even like for training materials. We really have this part of our DNA that we try first. People have to trust the change and only then we are ready to make bigger step. So that's all from my side. And now I'm ready to take your questions.
Okay, you can hear me, right?
I do.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for that. I think that was this really on point, very practical knowledge. Thank you, Lenka, for sharing. So now we will take some questions. So if somebody is still curious about something, please write in the chat or Q&A. Nevertheless, the first one that we have is that you mentioned that right now at Raiffeisen, maybe you actually prefer this approach of starting small rather than the big bang.
Right.
And I wanted to ask you, how do you choose initiatives that should be actually worked on in the agile way? What kind of like customer problems like are you solving that get prioritized to be, let's say, worked on in the agile way?
Right. So we have actually agile teams or agile initiatives all across our products, and we also have them in supporting functions. But the trick is that we don't really choose, we don't really decide. We are all about this, that we give people choice to come to us and tell us like we would like to build something here, build something here, something there. We support the change. So of course that we are having a lot of discussions either on the board level or on management level, but it's not decision making done centrally. It's really about discussion with different leaders in the organization and rather supporting them in making the change than saying, here we need to step in, here we need to make the change. Because for the change, we need cooperation of all these people, and that's only possible if they really understand and have some experience of what benefits will it bring to them. Then they are engaged, and then they are, contributing to the transformation, scaling up.
Yeah, they don't treat it like as a to-do or a homework that somebody.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. We have a couple of more questions. First one from Thomas. What are the main challenges in the system switch from traditional regulated environment with lots of structure process to agile?
Yeah, so this is financial institutions here. So you know that agility or an agile transformation, of course, will not help you to get rid of any regulations. The regulations will still be there, but the trick is how do you actually implement these things? So for instance, there are regulations on products, on product design, and here you have a choice. Either you really engage experts on these regulations and on the rules at the beginning of your product design, and by this approach, again, things may look a little bit slower at the beginning because there are more stakeholders, more people involved, but you're getting a huge benefit, and that is avoiding this kind of ping pong. When you do something and then you go to the experts and you say, hey guys, approve. And then they say, well, we cannot approve because you missed this and that point, and there is a new regulation and something, and you have to rework it. So if we will do it this way, then of course we can forget about agility, because agility is all about cross-functional, having the capabilities at the moment when you need them, utilizing them, and then doing something which makes sense. So that's why the way how do we address it, that we are connecting these experts on regulatory environments at the beginning of the process and then engaging them through the process. But the regulation is still there.
Okay. I think we have another question that's coming in from Joanna from Frontiera. Joanna, are you with us? I thought.
Just promoted her. She will be on in a second.
Okay. Hello, hello.
Well, otherwise we can continue with Istvan.
Yeah, I think Istvan, please correct me if I'm wrong. Istvan, maybe you can write again in the Q&A, but I think that the question was answered because it's very similar to the one that Thomas asked. So I would get to Petr in case there is something else. Istvan, please write us. So from Petr says, hello, I very much agree with your approach, but how do you get the buy-in of the CEO to support all of this? As I find it very essential to make it happen and not have it just on paper. I think
right.
that's a very valid question.
Right, this is interesting. Okay, so I will answer really honestly. I have a bit issue with even the wording, how do you get buy-in? Because this is the central point. So I would say I do not get buy-in. I co-create the thing together with the people who are involved in that. This is not a trivial thing to do, but it's really about how do you even work with people who you want to cooperate with, which includes also the board, and it includes also CEO people. So you really have to invest your time in sharing your expertise, building your credibility. You have to be patient to understand their voice, because after all, they are the ultimate responsible people for the whole company. So you need to let them talk. You need to understand what are they looking for, and you have to create it together. So by this approach, you don't get buy-in. It's not you pushing your ideas against other people who may resist. You really have to be open, approachable, and then create the objectives and the lighthouse, as we call it. You have to create it together. It has to be their lighthouse. It's not something that you offer and then you want people to follow. You have to create it together.
Lenka, can you hear me?
Yes.
I think one of the important things that you talked about was things that I'm also very kind of like passionate about is like, how do you find the people within your company that want to actually participate in agile projects? And the other thing that you talked about was balance, that you can't explode a company with a new initiative, right? It needs to be somehow integrated in there. It's not about transforming organizations overnight. It's about finding this balance of how do you maintain the success that you're having as a company while experimenting with new ways of working. And I think that's one of the most important things to be talking about when it comes to Agile, because this whole scaling thing for me is, it's a way to disrupt a company rather than helping a company thrive. So you need to be able to interject new ways of working, new innovation models while maintaining what you've been successful at all along. And I think that's one of the most important things that you touched upon. So I just want to say, I enjoyed your talk. It's not necessarily a question. It's more of like, I'm agreeing with what you said.
Thank you for your comment. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, then now just a quick reminder, we are in the part of our conference where we talk about scaling Agile across organizations. And I would like to invite Mads. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Mads Lundgård from Danske Bank. He is actually leading the end-to-end transformation agenda within the Danske Bank, which is the second largest bank in the Nordics. He has a special focus on retail banking, housing and financing processes. And his key focus is to understand the customer journey from the end-to-end perspective and apply Agile development principles to succeed in transforming the bank. I think that very similarly to what you were talking about, Lenka, also Mads is a big believer in results being brought basically by empowering people. Yeah, so I think that you already agree on that. Yeah, and again, Akos will be moderating this panel with both of you, and I encourage everybody else from the audience to ask questions that we will take at the end of this session.
Yes, and hello again, Mads and Lenka. Mads, I really hope that I'm pronouncing your name right because we haven't met. Unfortunately, our partner Stefan had to skip this panel because he fell off sick, so I'm filling in for him now for this panel. Nevertheless, thank you very much for joining us again today. And what I wanted to start out with as a first discussion point is that we see also in our practice a lot of companies that are experimenting with Agile. And I think that is really common, that a lot of companies just have a couple of squads, a couple of cross-functional teams piloting in technology or in any area or a small area of the business with Agile. But we see very few companies that actually successfully scale their Agile operations. There are a lot of these, what I usually call Agile pilot zombies lying around in larger companies that are stuck for maybe even years in this piloting phase. What do you think are the reasons or the challenges that cause this, that not a lot of companies are able to make that first step towards scaling their Agile operations?
That's a really good question. Should I go first or Lenka?
Go ahead.
Okay. So hi everyone, my name is Mads Lundgård from Danske Bank, and Danske Bank's Agile journey has been many years. And I would say that it lasted for about 4 to 5 years. And in this 1st of February 2021, we launched the go live of the Big Bang. But it's been 4 or 5 years coming to this point. So it all started out with moonshots coming, and moonshots would then be individual projects that were set up in an Agile way. They were running for a year or two before that it was seen that, okay, these deliver some benefits, they do something different. It went then from a moonshot period into a couple of years period where that there were the proof of concept that Lenka was sharing as well. And I'm really a fan of this because it's a culture, it's a mentality, and it's a way of working. So we need to prove that things are working and that things are going differently. So it went from project based into now a proof of concept based. And there we created in Danske Bank the 5 tribes. And 5 tribes is, a tribe would be approximately 100 people. It depends on the size of the tribe, etc. And this proof of concept was running for about 1 year. And then 1st of February 2021, the full Agile at scale was launched, consisting of 20 tribes, sorry. So the amount of people here involved in those and those development organizations is around 4,000 people in total that has now gone full live a couple of months ago. So I think that your question is, why does it take so long time? It takes a lot of time, and it also takes a lot of time for management across all levels to understand and feel the change. It takes time to change as humans as well, to understand what does it mean for me. Okay, so I need to change. So Agile is not something that you are doing or you are giving to me because you are the development organization and now you work Agile and now you deliver more to me. But this is something for all of us, and it's a mentality and a way of collaborating. And leaders across any way in the organization will need to change themselves in some kind of way. Of course, you can start with a small project, but often this grows or scales. Did that answer a little bit of it?
Oh, and it gave me a couple of follow-up questions, but what I would really like to also ask Lenka, what you think about this, like what stops companies from scaling?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and I'm just trying to think, because this is hard for me to answer, because I am that's my job to make it happen. So I typically come somewhere where there are some efforts, and then I just, my job is to make it moving. So when I can think like what was preventing to go faster, I would like to be really fair here, because sometimes even when we use the wording, we say like transformation, this looks like a task. It's like, okay, design a roadmap, just get it done. But it's not really reflecting what is it all about, because it's about the change. And it's easy to, with frameworks, it's easy like to see the pictures, squads, tribes, we put it together, we change the structure and it's done. It's absolutely not at all. It's a lot about building new capabilities. It's about understanding. It's easy for us people who are in the field, like I'm working in this like 20 years. And it's a funny fact, when I was studying computer sciences, of course, we already learned how to develop software in iterative incremental way. These concepts are here for a long time, but it's a huge difference if you are in the field for 10 years or if it's new for you. And for management, they have the responsibility. They have to deliver results. There are some shareholders, some owners, someone who they report to. So it's not that easy to come and say, okay, perfect, I love it, let's change everything. And there's a lot of work to be done on this field to really address their understanding, their issues, find the right way how this is actually going to help your business, because we don't do the transformation just for the sake of transformation. There are some business objectives, there is the digitalization, there are the market challenges, and you need to be able to explain how does it all fit together. This takes time. And then there's another element. Again, we mostly connect agility to software development, and a lot of coaches, a lot of scrum masters are coming from this field. But to be a good coach, you need to have two set of skills. Let's just to make it simple, the hard skills, the software development itself, and the soft ones. This is hard to find this mix in people, and you need these people to make their change right. So there are many factors that can slow you down on the way, but they are relevant factors. We have to be able to see them.
Yes, fully agree. And then I would also add to the what is making this go slower. So there are three aspects of it. That is the what are you doing, the how are you doing it, and why are you doing it.
Yeah.
So the why is really important for the agile change here. And for any kind of level of organization, you need to understand why you're changing yourself. And that would be, would you like a faster time to market? Would you like to understand the customers better? Would you like to increase cost efficiency? And these kind of parameters is a way of it. Would you like to improve the engagement of the employees? What is the success criteria for it? Then subsequently to that comes also the how. And then you can start a lot with the design, and you can start finding out, is this the one truth for me? Because scaling agile is not the one truth for everyone. And I think that's one of the key learnings also from Danske Bank, is that, can you say, are we running projects today? Yeah, we are. We have a huge project organization that are still delivering projects in the regular way. And this is for parts of the organization that are not suitable for the scaling in this kind of way. or not yet suitable, you can say. So it is a conscious decision of why are you doing it, coming to the how, and then you will find out eventually also what are you exactly going to do.
Okay, actually, Mads, you just touched upon a question that I really wanted to ask. So we talk a lot, and Lenka, you also mentioned management buy-in, which usually requires some kind of proof. You are running proofs of concept, and you have to meet some success criteria when you are looking at an agile pilot, or you are trying to see if something was good or not. What are good ways to measure the success of a pilot? Like, when would you, how would you define the success of it? How can you scale this success? When is a pilot successful so that it can be scaled?
It's a good learning and good question. So Lenka's presentation had a lot of it in it. Measuring agile is a holistic exercise, and by holistic, you measure the culture, you measure the processes, you measure the outcome, and one thing I would maybe add to it is that you measure the impact on the customer, because what a lot of the agile methodology can as a culture is that it can learn us how to test things together as an organization so that we improve together, but it also needs to learn us how to test together with the customer. So that dimension can be added in. And I think that there are many parameters in this. The most important is that it's a holistic measure, agreeing upon how do you make the agile transformation in your organization.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because after all, what matters is what you achieve. So the success of these pilots is if these teams are able to deliver what you expect from that. And this can be many different things, because even in our case, we have agile teams who work specifically in business area, so they have direct impact on customers, but we have also agile teams who work more inside the organization and have different type of impact. Now we need to understand what kind of impact we want to achieve by that particular team, and then and so of course we look at the results, but we also look very closely, like, are people happy? Do they enjoy to work like this? Do they see sense in that? Is the team built right? Do we have everything that we need for the team? Do we give them enough support? Because it's not only about matrix KPIs, it's really a lot about people, because people, after all, are those people who deliver the results. So they must feel comfortable in this setup. So there are many elements. Just for the practical part of it, we use different set of health checklists, something that helps us to look at this. Okay, didn't we forget that? But we are very careful with this, that it's really just like a guideline, something to look at, but not the objective.
Yes, and it actually brings us to another question, which is about the frameworks. So I think, Lenka, you also mentioned a couple of ideas about frameworks that you're using, either as an inspiration or as something that you're implementing in your system. I think everyone in the audience must have heard at least about the Spotify model, must have read at least the ING case studies, and a lot of frameworks that are built for a specific company, but somehow get very mainstream. What do you think about these? Do you think that most companies should be working out their own frameworks, or do you think it's better to learn and take over as much as possible from existing frameworks? What do you think about this?
Right. So me myself, I am certified for SAFe framework, for instance, but I do not really use it in a way to implement it. I think that again, this can be, so where is the value in frameworks? It really tells you, okay, focus on this and that area. It also can give you some kind of like first steps. This is how you start. This is what you need to cover. But the essence of frameworks is there are two parts. First of all, how to make the team actionable so that they are able to deliver. This is all about this E2E cross-functional, this type of stuff. The other essence of frameworks is how to coordinate. And this is very business by business specific, because in some businesses, you need to coordinate teams that work on large portfolios of connected products, which is a different type of coordination when you have teams working on single topics. This is very different. And also what is different is what is underlying under these teams, the architecture, the systems, the applications that they use with. It's a different thing if you work on core banking systems, monolithic architecture, we all know that, or if you have this luxury of, okay, let's take example of Spotify, you know, mobile apps, etc. These are like elements that step into that. So sometimes you simply cannot follow the simple structure of a framework because the current conditions do not allow you. But as for any transformation leader, for any agile coach, I believe you need to understand the mechanics. You need to understand how it's supposed to work. And then you need to be able to compare it with your organization and say, maybe, okay, I can follow this. Maybe this is just the first step, you know, and then eventually you adjust for your own company.
And in the meantime, Fabiola just wrote me that there are a lot of questions for you in the Q&A, so I should cut the discussion a couple of minutes shorter, but I really want to ask at least one last question. Is that we are talking a lot about success in cases of, in these case studies, about scaling agile transformations. Can you share a couple of failures, like something that you tried and didn't work?
I'm sorry, was it a question on me or on Mads?
Both of you. It would be really great because you're both running scaling in agile organizations, and it would be great to hear a couple of stories from experience, not just about failure, but about cases when you had to change direction or you tried something and it didn't work, and how you managed that.
Yeah, okay, so I will share one story. And I mentioned that we use objectives and key results method, which is a method how to set your targets, your objectives, and how to get closer to these objectives every quarter. And the method itself, it expects you that you have these objectives, and then every quarter you have some key results. And I was part of the failure when this method was quite closely connected to motivation, let's say, and reward system. And this was really a problem because, you know, in a traditional way of thinking or in traditional organization, when we look at objectives, we immediately connect it with performance management, with bonuses, and we are like, okay, we need to give people objectives, and when they achieve them, then we give them the bonus and everything is fine. This doesn't work like this in agile environment because we don't want to stress people by not achieving objectives. If we want to encourage them to experiment, to learn and innovate, we must be prepared that they will simply not achieve their objectives. It's just like that. We want to teach them to be creative, to find a way, not just repeat patterns that they know from the past. And so this failure to try to translate or basically just use different method for kind of like old concept, it showed up very quickly that it's not going to work because it was impossible to balance so many key results by single person, especially if you need to cooperate across the teams. It became a nightmare. So this concept was quickly abandoned.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, that's a great example. Mads, do you have a similar experience that you would be willing to share?
Yes, I can share that. So I would say it more collectively on behalf of Danske Bank as well. So we've been the great learning we've had is regarding the process of change into a more agile organization, because the process here has been really long, and I think initially it was potentially underestimated the impact that it can be of early involvement, because early involvement is really good to a certain extent, but you need to find out how early, because if you create, as leaders and leaders of change, if you create too much uncertainty during the transformation process of transforming without being able to tell necessarily what will the outcome be, it can be really hard for many leaders and really hard for many employees as well. So what is important is that you spend enough time on talking about change, spending enough time on sharing what do we know now, what do we not know in a later point, and then the communication strategy, you can say, or tactics of transformation should be really considered. So I think that in our case here, we went out almost 1 year before and had massive communication to almost 4,000 employees regarding the change. But the change took a lot of time, actually, and maybe more time than expected, because it was more of a big bang in Danske Bank. And the cost of that can be quite high on the employee motivation. So that's more in terms of how do you manage the transformation well. So it's really a balance saying, so how long time do we want the transformation going into a more agile organization to be, because it can be costly.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing these experiences. And now I will have to give it back to Fabiola because she would like to ask a couple of questions that are coming from the audience, because you are both very in high demand for sharing more experiences with our community, I think.
Yes, especially on the topics of convincing people, I think.
Yeah.
So there is.
Thank you very much again, Mads and Lenka. And now I will go off screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Akosh. So there is a continuation to the question that I shared before about getting the word that you don't like, Lenka, buy-in from the CEO. And Pet says that, that in general, this traditional waterfall is preferred because of better control. So in the end, he feels that you still need to help CEOs and so on shift their mindset. Do you have any comment on that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the control sounds good because you are in control, you see what's going on, you can be sure that you have the results. However, we probably all know that, especially in waterfall project management approach, because I'm also in that field, I'm in both Agile and project. So there are these crazy statistics, how many projects fails, how we overexceed the budget, timing and everything. So we all know that projects are not perfect. There's enough statistics for that. So the arguments that I use for this case is that by this command and control approach, you actually push back talents of people. And this is the key, because in Agile way of working, what we do, that we really give people chance to speak up, to share their opinion, to use their expertise and to expand their expertise. It's all about working with talent. And the talent, that is what gets you the results. So if you want to have good results, you have to support talent in your organization. You have to give them the voice and you have to let them figure it out by themselves. This is one of the essence of Agile way of working.
Yes.
And I would ask you also, like, to continue on that, Mads, if you will, because there is also another question that Lenka touched upon. Which arguments do you consider the most important or impressive? Do you have other arguments in your pocket that you use? So
I would say you need to consider what would you like to control, actually. Would you like to control the solution of what your employees are doing? I'm not so sure that there are many leaders who would like to control that. And I think giving the empowerment to the team to find out what is the right product, how does the right service look like, and what is right for the customer, because people look to, and talk with the customers. Then giving that empowerment is really the most important. I think scaling Agile has a lot of control in it, in a good way, in continuously understanding and monitoring what is going on in the organization. And by applying these principles in a more holistic way and looking at also, so what brings a good culture of strong development here, for example, there can be a lot of sufficiently with amount of reporting, with tools, with frameworks that you can measure on how is it going. But what's the most important is that finding the solutions on product level is up to the team to do, because that's where it's important to have the vision. So I would say that one of the arguments that you have is that upwards in the organization is that it's an invitation to co-create to a better extent with those who are actually knowing of the preferences of the customers, who are knowing and understanding what are the processes that are going to make a difference for our company. So in this case also, I think, and specifically for Danske Bank, there was a shift in the CEO role. So we had more than 1 year ago, we had a new CEO coming in that had experience with Agile. So that accelerated the Agile transformation, that's for sure. So in this way, that did certainly help a lot. But it would not be the case if we didn't have the different proof cases before. So the proof cases are really important, and that is to create environments in hubs that are applying the Agile methodologies, where that you then can come and visit. You bring in the stakeholders, you bring in the customers, and you can say upwards, when have you last time had a dialogue with the customers about how they prefer our products? And if you invite the C-level into this kind of dialogues, they can see that it's really competent people on the floor that are helping the dialogue and finding out the solution together with the customer, together with the organization, through co-creation and etc.
Okay, thank you so much to both of you for answer to this question. There is now, we're going a little bit down the corporate ladder, and there is a question: were you able to change the mindset of B1 managers, or you had to change them? If yes, how long it took, and was this accepted by the board or the CEO? So maybe now I would jump back to Lenka.
Well, B1 managers, of course, are an essential part of the change. So exactly the same things apply to them. And I think it doesn't really matter if it's a manager, if it's a CEO, if it's an employee, because after all, you need to have all of these people on board. So they all need to see benefits in what you do. They all need to be part of the change. Of course, when you are B1 or when you are CEO, you have different decision power. That's true. So sometimes you need to get to the point where these people make the decision. But how to convince them, how to work with them, how to change the mindset, I would say the method is still the same. And it's really about awareness. It's about very transparent and honest approach to really show what is working, what is not working, and give them enough time so that they find themselves into that. But maybe I will share some of my tricks, because when Mats was talking, I was just trying to figure out what do I actually do, how do I explain things. And so, for instance, one good argument, which I found especially nice in the banking environment, that between project and agile approach, there is a different way how to manage risk. And risk is something that we all need to manage. It's quite a powerful argument. When you look at the waterfall and project, the risk is generally managed in a way that you try to figure out upfront what everything may happen. And then you're focused all the way through not to make it happen, which was valid in certain type of companies, in certain type of environment. It's basically becoming totally impossible when everything in the company is part of a change. And it's not just change like transformation, but we work with products differently. We lost that stability. Like years back, it was stable. You know, the company and few work changes were happening. You managed them right project, so you could foresee what's going to happen. Now you can't, because it's too many of them. While in agile way of working, the way how you manage risk is by much more frequent check and control. You have agile reviews, you have sprints, so you are much sooner able to see if something's going wrong. So this was one of the arguments. And the other argument, which we really like, is that you put head and hands together. You know, what you figure out, you're able to execute. So these are the things, the discussions that we have, and it's very convincing.
Okay.
And then the mindset is changing altogether. Mindset is changing, I believe, this understanding what is it all about, then you actually achieve the change of mindset.
Great. Thank you so much for this answer. There's we have 1 minute left, maybe 2 maximum, and one more question to go. So maybe now I will go to you, Mats. It's a little bit different. Can the success in large parts of players like N26 or Revolut, we explained that they started fresh. Agile without legacy systems, IT, but also operational models, structures. And what do you think of Erste Bank's approach, creating a separate organization outside the bank's main operation, and that's specifically here for the George product?
It's really super good question. So I think when you're in a scale-up company, the Agile approach fits really well from the start and very early, because you immediately start tests together with the customer and you start collaborating a certain way internally. So yes, this would be made easier if you don't have the whole legacy overview, because in the financial sector, and at least definitely the company that I'm from, there is multiple levels of the systems, and the system landscape is very, very complex, and it's also home developed. So in this kind of way, creating that overview of the system landscape, this will be a huge part of the Agile digital transformation if you do it in a scaled way. And creating that overview is a massive part of the transformation. Then when you look at what does it mean to do it outside of the bank, I would consider that, so if you take this example, I don't know as the bank how that they have done it exactly, but there can be some benefits with it, but it's still on a proof of scale level. So if you create a separate island outside of your organization, it would have to be in order to learn that in a way. It can be a market tactic, you can say, if you want to explore a certain market, if you want to explore a certain part of the financial sector in a certain way, and see how can we in any way kind of learn this, and what does it take. So, but it would need to be going into the same organization as well, because you're hung up on the same financial systems, you're hung up on the same regulatories, you're hung up on all of the same staff functions around. So, but doing that for a period of a year or two is comparable with the early stages as well of how that Danske Bank was making these moonshots on individual projects that were even separated in different buildings. You couldn't really access them, and so on and so on. So it's a possibility, but it seems like a temporary state without my big knowledge of it.
Thank you for the answer. And thank you both for joining, Lenka for your keynote and joining the panel, and Mads for joining the panel, sharing all the amazing insights. I think that we could talk forever, but we need to we need to move to another speaker and to the next part of our conference. So thanks a lot again. And yeah, I would encourage our audience to network with Lenka and also Mads later on, in case maybe there's any questions they would be so nice to answer. LinkedIn, it's all available on empoweringagile.com, by the way, all the information, how you can get in touch with them.
All is very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Bye.